All right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report. The discussion starts right now. I'd like to hear your views and opinion at Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Citizen Monday Report. We're talking about ODM-UDA premarital talks. That's what we're calling it. But there's a team that has now been tasked with implementing the MOU. And NADCO, interestingly, NADCO report implementation is first among the agenda of the MOU. And they're here with us. Javas Bigambo is the Vice Chairperson, ODM-UDA MOU Implementation Committee. Thank you for making time. Franklin Mukwanja is here, is Executive Director, Center for Multi-Party Democracy. Asante for making time.
Having me.
And Dr. Peter Mba is a governance and leadership expert and also the Secretary Planning and Economic Affairs, DCP. Thank you very much for making time. Javas, I'll start with you on this. So what is the game plan now that you're looking to implement both the MOU and the NADCO report at the same time?
Trevor, we are living in times that are altogether progressive and interesting in the voluminous journal of affairs of political issues in our country. That after various periods, circumstances that have driven this country nearly to a cliff because of socio-political issues and demand or push for certain rights and positioning of certain voicing by the people, we have had issues, for example, in 2024 of demonstrations and protests about socioeconomic issues captured in Article 43 of the Constitution. We had protests against the impugned Finance Bill 2024. And early this year, we also had protests and various demonstrations. And all these necessitated certain emerging political realities that were materialized by UDA and ODM coming together when President William Ruto and Right Honorable Raila Odinga came together for the greater good and the interest of the country to see how the challenges facing the country can be faced. Because, Trevor, when you look at the history of this country, anytime we've had to make progress, that progress has been made by facing or looking at challenges in the eye and facing them. And I think it is what made the resolute decision by His Excellency President William Ruto and Honorable Raila Odinga to come together, while initially there were political nemesis in the run-up to 2022 general election, that driven by the spirit of patriotism and nationalism, that they can come together and save a nation, but also much more importantly, to listen to the demands of the people, the citizens, because government led by President William Ruto is the duty bearer, has to make sure that it delivers for the good of the people and the progress of a nation.
That's all right, Bigambo. What I'm asking is, what is the plan to ensure that you have everyone on board? Because we've seen call for public participation. This was done at some point. So are we locked in a circumlocucious sort of argument where we have public participation after public participation of a document that was also done for a public participation? What is the plan now
in
to
fact,
ensure you have people?
I think I would say that the President and Honorable Raila Odinga are not interested in circumlocution and such kind of affairs. And that's why when you look at the MOU that they signed, the 10-point agenda, issues that have even led to the discussions that took place today in the Joint Parliamentary Group meeting, the first of its kind since the MOU was signed. One is to bring the people in critical, conscious, and intentional discussions. And that's why one of the 9-point agenda issues is inclusion of the people. And when you look at the issue of inclusion, it takes us to Article 10, Sub-Article 2 of the Constitution, public participation. In fact, that is peremptory in our Constitution, that governance affairs of this country must include the people. And that is why the parliamentary group meeting today, one of its kind, among many others that will come, the intention is to foster political goodwill that would ensure the 10-point agenda issues are canvassed by a spirit of bipartisanship and not partisan politics, so that critical issues, among them, for instance, fighting corruption, issues of corruption, the President has spoken about it today. Look at issues to do, for example, reduction of wastage of public resources and enhancing accountability. Or look at one of the other agenda item issues, issues of making sure that the rights to participate or the rights to protest by the people as provided for in Article 37, and the issues to do with compensations, a forte or an initiative that's been placed under the shoulders of Professor Makau Mutua for coordination, is to ensure that now moving forward, our country can have a politics where we listen to each other, work together, where certain atrocities have been committed and claims are made or raised. Compensations should be made as a social justice issue.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Mbai on this. Dr. Mbai, will this solve the political impasse in the country today?
This one will not, Trevor, because the whole 10 points agenda are in the Constitution. We simply need to just implement the Constitution as per 2010. But we understand the dynamics I've read Javas is talking about, because here comes the deputy, the second deputy president is impeached, and there is a gap, and we had to get the ODM side, mark my words, not Azimio ODM, to come quickly. Now, the plan was AU, it fails. So something had to be crafted rather very fast. If you look at the 10 points, and by the way, they keep changing. If you look at the wording of the initial 10 points, and the ones that were released the other day, there are a few words have been changed, including there's nothing like on the number 10 point, there was the issue of aiding abductions. In the earlier one, this one, there's nothing like aiding abductions. So whether it is a deliberate, I don't know. So the 10 points were put together, and if you remember the recent one, they said they have discovered the missing link is a team. 6 months later is when they have discovered. So it's a moving target. You know, right now, what you had be mentioned the other day is that, I think Lather, is that now we have discovered we need a team which we had not thought about, and the team here now is like implementing the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. You know, everything is changing. Before, they were not sure what it was to be. So my summary is this. Trevor, everything here in these 10 points, I've been looking at them. They were all meant to be, they are actually some of them like leadership and integrity, there's a whole chapter in the Constitution. They are all meant to implement, but because of some dynamics, something you call very clearly premarital talks, because they want to have a marriage next year, and the date is there in the first anniversary. You know, they have done dating, you know, courtship. During the first anniversary, they are going to have some marriage, going all the way. Something, if you look at something, nobody brought together by two parties in after every election. If you look at something like that happened in 2022, history just repeating itself. And you know how BBI ended. Because people are suspicious of such things. Now, I'll give an example of what he has given. Just 2 examples, so you don't mind. One. When you talk about fighting corruption, now, we know that if you have a father and you have some vices at home and children can see what you do, don't blame the kids for doing what you do, the bad manners and bad behavior. Now, this marriage came a place where somebody had to be impeached. So what happened? Money changed hands. That's what we are told. A lot of money changed hands. So you cannot tell the same people, now stop eating. Now, okay, I've gotten what I wanted. So it is not corruption when somebody is giving the money to do whatever needs to be done for him. But when the same people are demanding money from somebody else, it becomes corruption. Look at the double standards. And somebody gets very bitter because money is being demanded. But number two, I'm asking a question, a very quick one. This issue of compensation, number one, it took many months. But there is something called Victim Protection Act, 2014. Now, this act was enacted, but never operationalized. It was supposed to have a board, some trustees, and Treasury was supposed to allocate money for victims of such victims you're talking about. 2014, never operationalized, but here we are creating something. You know, we want to move around and so we can dance. You know, we are dancing and passing time so that time can go. I can tell you, there's no intention of doing anything. Okay. That's why they're saying, let's give it until next year, then we see what happens. Okay. Now, you have seen a trade, Trevor, where, and I'll talk about leadership and governance. Leadership and governance, Trevor, has to follow some principles, some order, some order. You know, that's what happens. There is nothing. All this is drama. You're going to be put into some dancing. Until next year, then some marriage. Let
me hear what Mukwanja says. I'll come to you, Javas, in just a bit. Mukwanja, is this political maturity or a collision of the elite politicians?
Yeah, Trevor, first, I think it's very interesting debating my two good friends here. You know, Dr. Mbaye is in between being dismissed and resigning, and Javas is just freshly minted as vice.
I think Bukaja should concentrate on the points he's making.
Very good.
He's analyzing there.
No, it's just highlighting your bias.
So we understand.
Yeah.
We understand how they're making the arguments because there's a background to it. But clearly, bipartisanship is central to democratic systems. And when you have, especially in a polarized political environment, you want a situation where political elites and political parties will cooperate on issues of national interest and also clearly compete on policy and ideological differences. The challenge that we have, number one, is that we have to question whether these two political groupings have something deeper in terms of policy orientation and ideology. And the Javas team has a critical job to ensure that actually they are justifying that the relationship between Raila Odinga and William Ruto is beyond the political elite settlement, which has been there as a tradition. Because when we have elections and we have an inclusive election, we have outcomes that people don't disagree. We have seen, and Javas is calling today's parliamentary group meeting one of its kind. It's not. Raila Odinga has been in such a meeting since 1997. Right? And therefore, the work that is there is very critical. Let us not dismiss what is up their sleeves.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the things that the president mentioned today, they are actually critical issues that need a serious conversation. For the first time, I felt sitting in my office and watching through the conversation that we had elevated the issues around good governance, the issues around corruption, to a clear level that we needed to discuss. But then when the president says things like some people requested for 10 million shillings, for the conflict of interest law, we know that the bill came from the House, went to him, and he made some memorandum back to the House. So who was giving 10 million to who? Who was asking for the 10 million? All right? When we hear some of the sentiments that Raila Odinga is putting forward about devolution, all right, we know very well that Raila Odinga cannot take it away from him, that he's been a very good student, a very good stickler to pursuing some of the most progressive governance reform issues.
Yeah.
But what has ODM in NASA, ODM in CODE, and ODM has had control of many counties, county assemblies and county executives, have ODM leaders demonstrated the good governance that is required at the devolved level, so that we go beyond the mere issue of political posturing, the mere issue of, politicking, and I agree to this extent with Dr. Mbaye, so that it's not just about shifting the narrative. Because if you ask the younger generation, is that they told Raila, stay away from this conversation, right? Is Raila using this to justify some conversations?
Okay.
All right? So that we can see, and I hope that Javas' committee will help really connect this, that what Raila Odinga is saying, that we needed to have, yes, a struggling country and not a collapsing country. It is better off that way, and we made a political leadership decision. We need to see from the work that they are going to do that actually some of these issues are adequately discussed and addressed.
Yeah, Javas, I asked you earlier on what is the game plan for a reason, and let me paraphrase that question. So what is the priority area and what exactly are Kenyans discussing? I'll give you an example. You say implementation of the NADCO report. Among the first agendas of the NADCO report is entrenchment of the affirmative action funds into the constitution, NGCDF, GAF, Ward Fund. We've heard the party leaders say that NGCDF should not be with the members of parliament. It should go back to counties. So what exactly are Kenyans discussing from the team?
Trevor, just before you respond to that question, I am baffled by the sentiments of my good sir here, Dr. Mbaye, who is perturbed that President William Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza government are implementing the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. What manifesto was he supposed to implement? Because when he says that by railroading all these issues, including some of the issues that are contained within the 10-point agenda that the government is implementing the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, I mean, really, President William Ruto campaigned under and prioritized the issues in the manifesto, and that's why he was elected. And so he should not sulk that President William Ruto is implementing his own manifesto for which he was elected. Secondly, on the issue of NADCO, remember that early 2023, when the nation was in strife, you remember the socioeconomic issues that were there, the UNGA protests, and it culminated in the bipartisan forum that was the NADCO, bringing together leaders from side of the opposition at the time and even government side, that's Kenya Kwanza. You remember even Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka was there, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa were there, all of them, Martha Karua were there. And all of them agreed in the end that this was the pathway to take the country forward. Today, they're on the other side. It tells you about how schemy and mischievous some politicians can be. And actually, in the spirit of the progress of a nation, all those leaders and parties that were at the table for NADCO should actually be happy and be part of the process of implementing this 10-point agenda that is under the committee on the committee oversighting the implementation of NADCO and the 10-point agenda in the MOU that brings ODM and UDA together, Kenya Kwanza and UDA and ODM together. On the issue of entrenchment of certain funds in the Constitution, as part of the issues that were contained or are contained in the NADCO report, what we are going to oversee the implementation. Remember that part of the methodological issues or approaches that we are going to use is extensive, critical, and inclusive consultations with the gamut of stakeholders in this country, the public, private sector, government agencies, civil society organizations, political parties, including, for example, an institution headed by my brother here, Franklin Mukwanja. When these consultations are held, we will need to come to a conclusion or to arrive at perspectives when, for example, Parliament is looking at the issue of the entrenchment of these funds in the Constitution. What is it that needs to be done for this entrenchment? Is it important for them to be entrenched? Today, for example, we've seen the remarks of Honorable Raila Odinga, party leader of ODM, indicating that the legislature should be doing the work of legislation and oversight and not implementation. Yeah. Of course, initially, as you've asked earlier, this was part of the issues that was in the NADCO report. Mm-hmm. It is now about all of us as a nation, because remember, Trevor, the 10-point agenda issues are not issues that are limited to the interests of ODM or UDA. These are interests that transcend these political parties. They are national interests. Issues, for example, about implementation of socioeconomic issues. What Brother Mbaye here is talking about, implementation of the Constitution. Some things in the Constitution are not self-executing unless there is legislation and policies that are in place for purposes of enabling such kind of implementation. So
are you saying that we're opening discussions completely and there's no set agenda? Because if you say that we are allowing people to even talk about whether NGCDF and GAF should be entrenched in the Constitution, something that was already pre-agreed in the NADCO report, it essentially means that there's no specific agenda.
Trevor, our committee is not going to open up or rip open the NADCO report. We are dealing with institutions that are supposed to conduct implementation of, for example, issues that are contained in the NADCO report. Now for our committee, the issue is, we'll want to find out, when you are charged with the implementation, are there any inhibitions or hindrances to the implementation? If there are any hindrances, what are these challenges that, and what will be needed for purposes of this implementation? Is it a question of political goodwill? Yeah. Is it a question of financing? Is it a question of creating a spirit of bipartisanship? Our committee is not implementing. Our committee is overseeing, and that's why we're working with the public and other institutions to see how that implementation is going on. Okay. And if there are any challenges, then we make recommendations that can smoothen the path of the said implementation.
Okay. Dr. Mbaye, will this address the systemic failures like corruption and lack of inclusivity? Because from what Javas is saying, that they're going to open a discussion with the public, find out what they think in terms of the 10-point agenda. Will this address the failures like corruption, lack of inclusivity? As
a student of politics and government, I can tell you that the Honorable Raila Odinga recently spoke about a dialogue. You must study and know what's happening and what's going to happen next. So he spoke about a dialogue which we refused. And so when we refused now, they're coming back to say there's this team of 5 people, and he has said it very well. They want to go begin talking. There must be talking for 1 year to buy time. Some talking, per DMs, money eaten around there, and those kind of a thing. We know. The big thing about Kenya today, we know what's going to happen and how it looks like and how it's going to be an outcome. So, I think now they're going to get these people, call it's another name of dialogue, to try to get some consensus. That's number 1. But number 2, he spoke about the 10, and you have asked a question. He said the 10-point agenda is not just about the 2 parties, it's about the country. Let me tell you the truth. Kenyans know the truth. They don't need all these stories. This is just a game of musical chairs. These things ought to just be implemented. And by the way, there's nowhere I said that I'm sulking because anybody is implementing Kenya Kwanza. Kenya Kwanza manifesto was very clear on specific issues, on health, on which went off from what was supposed to be done. Okay? So Kenyans want simply to be told issues on health, issues on education, issues on security, university model, issues of help, how they are not going to be killed and abducted. That is what they are going to be. They want. But as we speak today, 3 years later, there's still a team, who is the vice chairman is Javas, that want to go around again, begin asking people questions so that they give a report in March next year, which is a year to the election. I want to tell you the truth. Kenyans have basic questions. Why kill NHF? Why give NHF a bad name and kill it just to go and do something 104 billion that somebody is sacking from somewhere, a private company? Basic questions. Kenyans are asking, why kill issues on education? Nobody knows whether it is CBC and all that. Please don't go reopen that again. Kenyans are not going to go those dialogues to ask those questions. Simple questions about issues and deaths and all that. Those are the issues that people are asking. But let me say this. 2 things quickly. I've studied a bit of political leadership and governance. I'll tell you this. I would rather be on the side of the people and the side of God. If you do something and you dedicate your time to legal advice, and it's not possible, go on the side of the people and the side of God. I want to give you that, because some of us never go to any employment because of salaries. That one you need to find out. But very importantly, Trevor, I'll give you an example. When I spoke about Victim Protection Act, the question is, what is easier? Instead of exposing Kenyans to another drama, operationalize it if you are serious. Look at what happens. We have a system where, Trevor, people are so much into politics, they have never learned to do governance. And that is the problem in Kenya. Look at what's happening here. People are too much into politics. 3 years later, you still want to do drama, some PR, handshakes and some things that looks glittering. Because simply go, what happened with the Maragha reforms? He came, instead of NPS, National Police Service, simply going to do what is supposed to be done in reforms. You get a team here. What did the judge do? They simply, put it off. They called it illegal. Listen, hold it. Yeah. The other day, CS Health went and formed a team to look at the pending bills for NHIF. What did the courts do? Called it illegal. Because that is a work of Auditor General. We have people who are not trained on governance, leadership and governance. They are still doing politics. And that is why we are where we are. Okay. I can tell you, Trevor. Yeah. In a nutshell, because he said that this thing is for the people. There's nothing here for the people. This is for a few people who want to spend Kenyans' money in some drama to come and show them that they are doing something. Now, woe unto the MPs, because today being, I don't know which date is today, they were thrown under the bus. They were, after they did the biggest thing they were supposed to do, impeaching someone and doing a lot of things, thrown, because what the president is saying is this. Look here, guys, if president wanted to fight corruption, he would have called these people in camera, smear them, put them into order. But publicly twice, telling the MPs and senators, you guys are stealing. That's what he said. He is throwing them under the bus, and it seems he really wants to reinvent himself, put them under the bus, because they think they are not going to be re-elected, and he goes reinvents himself again by next year. But throw all of them under the bus, because the president is telling Kenyans, all these people are corrupt, don't elect them. Trevor, what is happening here?
Trevor, just before Mkwanja comes in.
Let's see Mkwanja, then I'll come to you. Just write it down, but Javas. How do you ensure that these reforms then benefits the citizens and not the political class? Because this is why we are here, really, that in the end, What's in it for the people?
Trevor, is back to the institutions. Because if you look at all these things we're discussing, whether it is the compensation team led by the good constitutional professor at State House, or whether it's the issue of corruption, we have weakened our institution. If you look at the president's statement, for instance, on the issue of parliamentarians being corrupt, he's concerned that the money, the 10 million shillings, did not reach. Yeah. But he's not really concerned about telling us the source and what the money was meant for. If legislators are there to actually do their job, and then he must, and let us not belittle this conversation. It's important that the president leads the conversation around corruption, around human rights and rule of law from the front. And that is important. But we must not pay lip service to this. The issue of institutions, if you look at the issues that are being canvassed, for instance, in Parliament, every impeachment, we have had stories of money exchanging hands.
Yeah.
Not for governors, not for his former deputy president, and that goes down to the institutions. If there is something that the Javas Committee can actually deliver, it's really revisiting the issue of executive overreach, particularly towards the National Assembly. That if there's something that Raila Odinga and William Ruto can gift this country beyond the 2024 June 2025, June 25th, 2024, it is actually giving back Parliament, I dare say, its balls. They have been neutered, and we need to ring fence and protect that institution. So strengthening institution is key. Number two is we really need to get deeper with political education. Because one of the things that we into this rat race is our politics has generally been a transactional conversation. If you look at the major corruption scandals that we've had in this country, they happen just shortly before or immediately after every election. And the transactional politics, the social welfare dispensation politics, those are the reasons that Raila is losing the battle about, about NGCDF, about the Ward Fund, and all these things. Because every politician wants money in their pockets for welfare dispensation. And Kenyans, unless we shift that political culture through increased and heightened political education to understand what is a social contract, what are our obligations as citizens, and what are the responsibilities and obligations of those that we elect. For instance, that we have to pay taxes. You know, once the housing levy is there, whether I'm servicing my mortgage or otherwise, I am actually paying. But then beyond the government taxing me, what are my obligations to make sure that I'm actually holding to account our government, our leaders? If you look at the other issues around NADCO, Trevor, other than IEBC, you can look at these others, the entrenchment of offices like the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the entrenchment of, these funds that we're talking about, that until shortly after some people realize their objective, and I dare say, the ones that are actually crying outside, it's because they may have been shortchanged in the game of arithmetics of arranging the IEBC. And therefore, they still have to find something to stick with. But then the numbers that shape these discussions are not favoring them.
Okay.
And unless we discuss these things honestly, keenly, clearly, particularly the question of is the UDA and the ODM arrangement truly about the issue they are highlighting, or was it simply the usual handshake to stabilize over time? Okay. So that then we can go back to our politics. We will not be able to move forward.
Javas, is this truly about the people? Because I see here that according to the implementation metrics, which I asked you earlier on, the team is expected to meet various stakeholders: Prime CS, Head of Public Service, Secretary to the Cabinet, Office of the President and its delivery unit, the Council of Governors and the Speakers of the bicameral Parliament, and then now go for public engagements. What's really in this for the people?
You see, Trevor, it is clear that when it comes to the implementation of issues contained in the 10-point agenda, institutions are very crucial. And that is why you see that even in the statement of establishment, there is the issue of meeting with government, departments, independent commissions, and even the critical officers in the executive, legislature. These are critical in the implementation of all the proposals that were contained, for example, in the 10-point in the NADCO report, and even within the arrangement of the letter and spirit of the MOU. Because for implementation to take place, it is institutions that implement. And that is why this overseeing process cannot take place without engaging all stakeholders, primary of them being institutions. And it is about the people. When you look, for example, at point number 10, promoting and protecting sovereignty, the rule of law, and constitutionalism, that is not about UDA, that's not about Kenya Kwanza, that's not about ODM, that's about this country, that's about the people. When it comes, for example, to do with national debt, that's about the country. It's not about these two sides, or Kenya Kwanza and ODM. When it comes to fighting corruption, and you may recall that at the close of July this year, President William Ruto signed into law the bill on conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And you can see that there is a conscious and intentional effort on that front. We have got the EACC in place. The question here is to see, to what extent are institutions, for instance, fighting corruption? What are the hindrances? Are there inhibitor substances or circumstances? And how can they be managed to ensure that we are fighting corruption? We cannot make progress in this country by sound bites and prejudiced hysteria. And that's why I disagree with Dr. Ambaye here, who does not even know the date of Monday 18th today. He does not know today the date of the day. And he knows that actually the issues in the 10-point agenda are not about the party. Now, of course, I know that, yes, potentially is running for office, and yes, he is an official in DCP. That, in fact, is part of the institutions within the democracy of Kenya, and it is right. And in fact, that's the kind of spirit we must encourage. When you look at part of the resolutions that were made in the joint PG today, one of the issues was promoting and perpetuating unity of purpose and inclusion for the greater good of the nation or the country. Mm. That is not about just Kenya Kwanza and ODM. Now, let's look at it this way. Today, President William Ruto, in his remarks, decried the issue of corruption and said, in fact, that Parliament, as an institution that is charged with oversight, should not have any elements within it that are corrupt. And now, when the president is calling out the issues of corruption amongst some few legislators, is that something that should make Dr. Ambaye frown and struggle with the fact that the president is calling out corruption? As head of state and government, the president actually is warrior number one, is supposed to be warrior number one, and is warrior number one in fighting corruption. I think when you look at the bipartisan spirit that should seize all of us as a country, it's the spirit that takes this country forward. Okay. And yes, because we are a democracy, nascent still though, all these divergent or different kinds of voices are there and will always be there. But in terms of moving forward, it's possible for us to say that people may hold different views, but we can move forward. Institutions are there. They need to be supported. Political goodwill needs to be facilitated or established for purposes of us ensuring that the democracy that was desired by the people when they voted into place the Constitution of Kenya 2010 by a referendum in 2010 becomes a maturing democracy that serves the interest of all Kenyans. Okay,
I'll take a quick break. When I come back, there's a lot of feedback that's also coming through. We'll try and read some of them in just a short while, but we're back in a moment. Stay with us. We're talking about the 10-point agenda, the NADCO report implementation, and the vice chair is here. So we're trying to find out how this is going to play out. And by the time it comes to you, what do you expect? Are you going to be given a list of things to talk about? Is it a one agenda? We'll talk about that in just a bit.